Serenity now, because this is Apocalypse Now.
Hey, Jackie.
Hi, Greg.
Welcome, everybody, to Seen and Heard. This is the podcast where two entertainment assistants go through the Sight and Sound Top 100 Greatest Films of All Time list. This week, we're at number 14?
Mm-hmm.
Number 14. So we're back at the top of the list. We do ping pong back and forth between the top and the bottom. And we're also back to the list this week after being off the list last week for E.T., the Extraterrestrial. If you have not given that one a listen, mosey on back and give it a perusal.
It's a good one. It's a really good one. And yes, E.T. is not on the top 100 list. It is on the top 250, but not on the top 100.
I think it's like 183 or something, which is way too low.
So that counts for our Personal Print series.
Yeah, so that is a personal print. And yeah, it was a fun episode. We had Robert McNaughton on, who plays the older brother Michael in the movie, and Chad had a great chat with him.
How great was he? Seriously.
So nice.
He really was.
Really had some great stories, too.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, can you imagine going to Harrison Ford's house?
And he answers the door in a
playing
towel.
Dungeons and Dragons, meeting Princess Diana, and she's crying.
Oh, God. No, I can't, because these things have never happened to me.
They haven't? Why? What's wrong with you? So, Greg, you know how you always roast me for not having seen things?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, our listeners do, and I certainly have noticed. And I'm here to tell you that there's a podcast called A Breath of Fresh Movie, in which the hosts only watch things that they haven't seen. The podcast is hosted by two very funny ladies, Victoria and Chelsea, and yeah, they watch films that they haven't seen. And it's a big variety of different movies.
Yeah, most recently they did Little Women, the Greta Gerwig Little Women. They did What's Up, Doc, the Bogdanovich film. And they did Videodrome, which I appreciated because they went against the grain on that one. It's a much beloved. I like the movie. It's a Cronenberg film. I like it. I'm not like in love with it the way that some people are, but they went against the grain.
Nice.
And which is always refreshing to hear.
Definitely.
But yeah, they do all kinds of Smooth Talk, Irma Vep, Kiki's Delivery Service. It's a little of everything.
Kiki!
The Children's Hour. So it's a really
Children's
nice
Hour.
sort of smorgasbord of offerings.
Yes. From what I've heard so far, they are great, and you guys should check them out.
Yeah, give them a listen. It's the Breath of Fresh Movie podcast. Anyway, what have you been watching this last week, Jackie?
Well, I did watch this movie called Bonjour Tristesse by Otto Preminger, and we mentioned it in the Breathless episode because it was one of the inspirations for Breathless. Godard and the Cahiers du Cinema guys saw this movie and they really championed Jean Seberg after it. And her character in Breathless is kind of based on her character in this movie. She's kind of this like, do you know what it's about? Basically,
no, I don't.
Okay, so it's David Niven.
Okay.
It's Jean Seberg. It's Deborah Kerr.
What?
Yes.
Wait, in an Otto Preminger movie?
Yes, you would love it. I'm pretty
God.
sure you would love it. If you don't love it, I think you'll really, really like it.
I need to see
it's them in the French Riviera. It's very fun. It's summer, but it's not like fun in that it's a frivolous movie. It actually gets like pretty heavy, but it's fun because it's those three amazing, iconic people just like playing through the Hays Code, like just trying to get around it, because it's like all about sex essentially. It's really good. I think you'll like it. It's a great summer flick.
Sounds right up my alley.
I think you'll like it. I saw that. I did watch Night on Earth, and it's really good. I really liked it. It's totally my style, and yeah. I think I can maybe safely say that the sequence with Winona Ryder and Jenna Rowlands is my favorite short film of all time.
Oh, really? Really?
I mean, how do you beat that?
It's funny. Here's what I think.
You don't like that one?
No. Jenna Rowlands is great, and she's amazing in it. And I really like Winona Ryder, but I think she's kind of out of her. When you pair her with Jenna Rowlands.
But she's so young. It's really like she's... Yeah, it's like a teenage role for her.
She's this kind of like greasy New York.
I love it. No, she's in LA.
Oh, it's LA. That's right. Yeah, I don't know. That's not my favorite segment from the movie.
Which one is?
I think it's the like Helsinki one.
That one's sad.
Yeah.
I love the Brooklyn one. I liked most of them. I like the Helsinki one a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know, something about seeing two actresses who I adore with all my heart together in a cab in a short movie that's so like crisp and clean and fun. It was great. Yeah, the big one for me this week was La Notte, which I hadn't seen before.
What's that?
And obviously it's a beautiful, moving masterpiece about really sad people. And yeah.
Have you seen the trilogy?
I've seen La Ventura. Which
one do you like better between the two? Not that everything needs to be compared. I'm just curious.
I don't know. I like both pretty equally.
That's fair.
Which one do you like more?
I think I lean a little more towards La Ventura, but I love
La Ventura is long, and La Notte I think was only like an hour and a half, or maybe it was 2. But isn't La Ventura like 2.5?
It might be 2.5. Yeah, it might be close to 3. 2.5 to 3.
It's long. Yeah. It was just so interesting though because Monica Vitti plays like a pretty small role in La Notte, but La Ventura came out before. So it's kind of interesting that she plays kind of a supporting role in this one and she's the lead. And
well, he's mixing it up, you know?
I know. I love that. No, I love that. I just feel like you don't see that often.
I feel like obviously we haven't had a chance to talk about Antonioni so far on this podcast. I really, really love his work. I'm a huge fan of Antonioni.
We'll be getting to him pretty soon.
He's the kind of director where, like, when you mention him, half the people roll their eyes, and then the other half are like, "Yeah, tell me more." So it's like I get why people hate him. But
why? I don't.
Because I get it. It's all of Anyway, we'll save that conversation for another time. But
let's save it for La Ventura. I think
we will
kind of coming up.
It should be sooner rather than later.
Yeah. What have you been watching?
I actually went to the Pasadena Playhouse for my first time.
Oh, you saw Uncle Vanya?
Yeah.
I saw it too.
I know. We saw it a week apart. Saw Uncle Vanya. And yeah, it was good production. And it was first time at the Playhouse. It was really cool, really intimate.
Isn't it a cool place?
I love how historic it feels. And it's haunted, apparently.
Is it really?
Yeah, by the owner, the original owner.
Really?
That's what they say.
And it's and I'm not like this big like California person, but it really is such a California theater.
You know what's funny? That's what I said right when we walked in the theater. I'm like, this theater is just California encapsulated.
And it's kind of lovely.
Yeah. Outside of that, I did see the new Downton Abbey movie.
You did?
A New Era. Yeah,
how'd you like
delightful.
it?
I mean, delightful.
Delightful.
As Martin Scorsese would say, it's not cinema. No.
Come on, Greg. Mrs. Patmore being an extra in a movie.
Oh, I loved that. Yeah.
That's cinema to me.
The whole movie subplot was amazing.
Come on.
And obviously they do something big with one of the main characters at the end of the movie, which was nice to have some kind of closure. And then I also saw, with a couple friends, we went to the Los Feliz 3, and we saw a Bigfoot movie called The Legend of Boggy Creek, which was, it was okay. Yeah, growing up, I was a huge Bigfoot person.
Really?
Like, just loved the lore and was really scared of Bigfoot stuff. It was okay. It's a movie from the 70s that they've just kind of like restored and they're showing it around. It was okay. The first half was better than the second half. And then the big one for me is I just finished Miyazaki's series, Conan, Future Boy Conan. So this is the first thing that Miyazaki ever directed. It was the late 70s. It was made for TV, and it's 26 episodes. They're 30 minutes each. And it's a continuing story. And so it's basically a 13-hour Miyazaki film. And if that sounds great to you, yes, it absolutely is. It's not quite as whimsical as like most of his proper films, but it's such a great adventure story, and it's kind of post-apocalyptic, but done in a really sunny way, because it's kind of for kids at the time, but don't let that scare you off because it has a lot going on in it. And yeah, the scope of the story is just massive. And again, he has 13 hours to tell this huge story.
Wow.
This is pre the founding of Ghibli. This is pre Lupin the Third. Like, this is the first thing that he directed. Really impressive. I'm actually really sad it's over because I watched it over the last like month or so. So I'm slow. But it was incredible.
Wow.
And I really loved like every second of it. And again, just such a gifted storyteller to come right out of the gate and just be like so concise, and the story is just so exciting and the forward momentum is there. It's beautifully done. If you are a Miyazaki fan, and who isn't, come on. If you're not, I don't trust you. And you haven't seen Future Boy Conan, drop everything you're doing. It was
It's
great.
a big commitment to drop everything I'm doing.
You know, you can leisurely watch it over the span of like a month or two like I did. But highly recommend. It's kind of like most similar to Castle in the Sky. If I had to compare it to one of his movies, if you like Castle in the Sky, you'll love Future Boy Conan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just don't hear people talk about it. I think it was kind of like hard to find in the States until recently. And it's one of his best things. So
Wow.
Essential Miyazaki. Anyway, with that being said, should we get into this week's film?
Number 14 on the list.
This is Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend. The end of our elaborate plans. The end of everything that stands. The end, no safety or surprise. The end, I'll never look into your eyes again.
Apocalypse Now was released in 1979. It was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, screenplay by Coppola, John Milius, and Michael Hare, who wrote the narration. It is a loose adaptation of the novella Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, which was written in the late 19th century about the then contemporary Congo trading scene. Cinematography by Vittorio Storaro. During the Vietnam War, U.S. Army Captain Willard is on a special mission to assassinate the rogue Colonel Kurtz, who has apparently lost his mind and is playing God with the natives. Already on the edge of his own sanity, Willard sails down the Nung River in a patrol boat, and in the process witnesses just how ridiculous not only the war is, but the general hypocrisy and corruption of the U.S. Army. When he reaches Kurtz, Willard is taken prisoner in his violent makeshift kingdom in Cambodia, and is forced to hear the colonel preach his philosophy. Although seemingly sympathetic to his madness, Willard knows what he must do, and he violently kills Kurtz. Without protest from Kurtz's minions, he boards the patrol boat and heads downriver. The film is really an ensemble piece, if you think about it. It stars Martin Sheen as Captain Willard, Marlon Brando as Colonel Kurtz. There's these fun cameos by Harrison Ford as Colonel Lucas, who's just a colonel that gives Willard his command, Dennis Hopper as the photojournalist, and if you want to call it a cameo, Robert Duvall plays Lieutenant Kilgore, who is the commander of the cavalry. It's like kind of a cameo, but like not really.
I mean, I would argue they're all, besides Harrison Ford, they're all like supporting roles.
I don't think the photojournalist is.
Dennis
I guess.
Hopper has a substantial role, I would say.
Okay. I'll allow that. The patrol boat's crew includes Albert Hall as Chief Phillips, Frederick Forrest as Chef, Lawrence Fishburne as Clean, and Sam Bottoms as Lance, the surfer dude. The film was shot on location in the Philippines and took 238 days to shoot. There's a whole award-winning documentary about how painstakingly difficult it was to make this movie. And it's called Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse.
It's made by his wife, Coppola's wife.
Yes, with a lot of footage that she took on set.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to AGUIRRE, really, really hard to shoot in the rainforest.
Yeah, you go into the jungle, it's not going to be easy.
Among the issues, I'm just going to name a few, went 2 times over budget. Harvey Keitel was originally cast as Captain Willard, but Coppola was dissatisfied, and he was sent home after a week, which sucks. And then he had to go back to the U.S. to convince Martin Sheen to do it. A typhoon destroyed the set. Martin Sheen had a heart attack and was out for over a month, which is crazy because he was only like 36. They borrowed helicopters from the Philippines Army, and the helicopters literally had to leave at random times to actually go do combat. And then they had to be repainted because they were painted to look like U.S. helicopters. They had to be repainted. There were real bodies used to decorate the set, and the police came and interrogated the prop master. This is a weird one. And apparently the prop master bought them from a grave robber. Did you know this?
I did not know that.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
They didn't know that they were buying from a grave robber, but then who do you buy dead bodies from? Anyway, and also, last but not least, Brando did not like the name Kurtz, and he needed a lot of convincing to allow them to call him that.
Well, he even didn't want to be there, and he showed up and he was overweight and he was insecure.
Yeah.
And Coppola had to just coax him into being seen on camera.
Yeah.
Which is why he shot in shadows for a lot of it.
Which works great.
Yeah.
The film, although unfinished, premiered at Cannes and it won the Palme d'Or. And it did great in the US. It was nominated for 8 Oscars, winning Best Cinematography and Best Sound. And there are a few different versions of the film. In 2001, Coppola put together The Redux, which included an additional 49 minutes of footage, including the famed French plantation scene, which I kept hearing about. I have never seen.
Oh, okay.
And then also the final cut in 2019 for the 40th anniversary, which cut 20 minutes down from The Redux.
Yeah.
I've only seen the traditional theatrical version.
It's the best one.
Yeah.
I've seen all 3.
What's all this buzz about this French plantation? Apparently it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to shoot, and then it was just cut.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's one of the last stops before they get to Kurtz, and they happen upon this abandoned plantation, and there's some French people living there, and it's all kind of ethereal and ghostly, and it's it's a really beautiful sequence, but again, it totally kills the flow of the movie up until that point, I think. And so, yeah, I prefer to watch theatrical because it does not have it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any other specs that I missed?
I mean, yeah, this was it was a completely Coppola went insane on this movie.
It almost cost him his life.
It almost cost him his life. There's that shot of with him with a gun to his head on the production of this. Yeah, I mean, look, and he put in a lot of his own personal, mortgaged his home and stuff for this film. So it was all riding on the line. If this was a flop, it would have ruined him. Funnily enough, the next film he made after this, One from the Heart, did ruin him. And he spent the entirety of the 80s and 90s, digging himself out of this hole, which explains why he made Godfather 3 and stuff, movies he didn't want to make, but did because of the commercial potential. Also Dracula, which happens to also just be a masterpiece. But yeah, so this was insanity. This is one of the all-time most like fabled film shoots ever.
Have you seen that doc?
I have, yeah. Have you?
No.
It's good. It's so fascinating. But yeah, it's this nearly like broke Coppola. So, and he never attempted something this big again.
Right. Speaking of nearly breaking, I would just like to point out that it is probably 107 degrees in this room right now.
Yeah, we are recording. It is 10 p.m. and I think it's still about 80 degrees outside. So it is, and of course, because we're doing a podcast, the fans and the ACs are all off. The windows are closed. So we are actually dying right now.
I'm in the heart of darkness
but
right
I think
now.
it's appropriate for this movie.
Yeah.
You know, how else could you talk about Apocalypse Now unless you're like sweating?
They're always sweating.
Yeah.
Like especially Willard, like there's just droplets on his face at all times.
It's such an aesthetic for this movie.
It really is.
Yeah. Anyway,
but I feel like he's the only one. No one else has droplets on them at all times.
Maybe his glands, he's just more prone to sweating. I don't know. Let's get into initial thoughts. What are your initial thoughts on Apocalypse Now?
Honestly, I'm not this huge Coppola person, unless we're talking about Sophia. I'm not. I'm really not. So it's like, obviously, I love The Godfather 1 and 2. I like this movie. I always have. I just don't really have extremely strong feelings towards it.
That's
but
fine.
I think it does what it does extremely well. You know, it's completely engaging. It's a somewhat simple plot. Pretty simple.
Very simple.
It's totally encompassing. You know, you're constantly being assaulted by how insane this is. To me personally, it's a little on the nose at some points, but I can appreciate that this is like a monstrous, gargantuan work, and I appreciate it for that. I really, really do. And also watching it after we kind of just did The Wild Bunch, and they have a decade between them, but they're both responses to the Vietnam War, which I thought was interesting. especially since we do ping pong, what are the odds that we go to the top? This keeps happening to us.
Yeah.
What are the odds that the movies from the top and the bottom that we just so happen to
sync
do
up.
in order sync up? It's really weird.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a thought I had. Oh, and I must say my initial thought is like Harrison Ford in this movie is just perfect. He is. I love how he comes and does this small 5-minute role. His glasses are on fleek.
Yeah.
He is just
Because this is
one
2
of
years
my
after the first Star Wars movie.
this is one of my favorite roles of his.
He's already Han Solo at this point.
Is
yeah.
that like a horrible thing to say? I'm like half joking also. I just want to point that out.
He does some interesting things. Honestly, you know when he's playing the Kurtz tape for...
Yeah.
Wait, what's Sheen's name again?
Willard.
For Willard. And he's about to turn off the tape, and he does this thing with his fingers near the volume where he like kind of it's like some little it's a
I know
nice
exactly
touch.
what you're talking about. No, but I just love this for him that he did this.
Yeah, of
You
course,
know?
of course.
What a great guy.
Oh, because again, he goes back with American Graffiti, which was his big breakthrough, which Coppola produced and Coppola fought for to be released. So he kind of, I don't want to say he owed Coppola, but I think him and George Lucas, like again, Spielberg,
It's all this big,
De Palma, all these guys are running around together. They're all
USC.
friends. Scorsese, one big group of friends, super group.
Yeah, they really are. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not really. I find myself, and I'll admit this, like I'm not that interested in movies with like no female roles in them, but I get it for this movie. Like it's totally historically accurate. Like I totally get it. I'm not saying there should be. It's not even a big deal for me in this movie. I noticed. Like you feel it, but also I mind it more in like other situations. Like okay, The Wild Bunch. I hate to like keep dragging it,
No,
but
drag it. Yeah.
yeah. So those are some of my initial thoughts.
Nice.
But what are yours?
So I first saw this in high school, and of course, like any,
Film bro?
any interested in film,
Bro?
teenage boy.
Almost like a bro.
No. I loved it, right? And this was always like one of the titans for me, and I think for most people, of like once you see Apocalypse Now, especially in your formative years, you're just like, oh, Apocalypse Now. I will say, so I first saw it in its Redux form, which I think is super inferior. I think that it adds, like you said, like 49 minutes or something into the movie. It's way too long. And I still really because that was the only version I knew, I really liked it. But later I ended up seeing the theatrical cut, and I was like, oh, this is I like this movie so much more, and this is a masterpiece, and it's amazing. And then a couple years ago when Coppola did the final cut, which his intention for the final cut was to split the difference between Redux and theatrical. So it's somewhere right in the middle. He keeps the French Plantation stuff, but he loses some of the other stuff with like the Playmates or whatever. So I saw that, and I was kind of hoping that would be the definitive cut for me, but it wasn't. Because again, the plantation scene just doesn't work. It just kills the flow of the movie.
Gotta see this damn plantation scene.
You should see it on its own, because it's a good sequence, but where it's at in the movie just totally kills the momentum.
Okay.
So the last time I saw this was the final cut, and it was when it first came out. And of course, they put it out on 4K disc, and I was like, well, I gotta get the 4K Apocalypse Now. So I watched the final cut, and I realized, I don't know if I love this movie anymore. I had this weird crisis with it where I'm like, because just for my the whole time I'd seen it for 15 years or whatever, I was so on board with it that viewing in 2019, I was like, wait, is this the be all end all? Like, actually, I don't know if it is. And then I rewatched it obviously today and watched the theatrical version, because that is the version that's on the Sight and Sound list. It's not one of the other ones. And again, I like theatrical more. So it's an interesting thing. We talked about this on the Breathless episode, and I think one of the other ones, where I wasn't in the mood to watch this today. I was not in the mood. I put it off to watch it today because I haven't felt like,
that's so funny.
I haven't felt like revisiting. I was like,
last night I sat. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I had the exact same feeling. It was 9 p.m. last night, and I'm like, okay, I could watch Apocalypse Now right now, but I really don't want to. And I put it off till this morning, and I woke up grumpy, and I'm like, God, I gotta watch Apocalypse Now this morning. That's so weird.
Yeah,
Continue.
well, I didn't feel like watching it, and it really is a testament to the power of this film that I was completely absorbed in it today, and I liked it much more than my 2019 viewing. Also, again, that was the final cut, but Yeah, I was completely absorbed in this today. And again, it took like 5 minutes to completely put me into the film.
Well, the opening is like probably my favorite part.
It's amazing.
The opening is incredible.
But so I was immediately in it, and I was in it for the whole movie. But I will say this, and this is something that I did not realize until my 2019 viewing, and it carried over to today's viewing. I don't think the Kurt stuff actually works. I love like 90% of this movie, but I think the stuff with Martin Sheen and Marlon Brando does not work. And I love Brando, and I've yet to see a performance from him where I don't like him, but I don't. It's not even that Marlon Brando doesn't work in this movie. It's what he's given. And I think
which is very little.
Because here's the thing, right? The whole film, it's set up from the very beginning. There's this crazy, out of control Colonel Kurtz, and he's gone amok in the jungle. And so you're building, and the whole thing, like Martin Sheen is reading the dossier, and like it's building him up, and almost no one can actually deliver on this image of Kurtz we have in our heads. So when we finally get there, again, he's shot in a lot of shadows and stuff like that, but I don't think they give him anything interesting to do. He literally does what you expect him to do. He just philosophizes,
reads
nonsense.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's it. And it's too much of it too.
Yeah.
And I almost wish that we didn't see Kurtz.
At all?
I almost wish that when Willard goes up into the temple, you just see him enter, and then we cut, and he's
dead.
Maybe, no. But like, I just feel like nothing can live up to the template that's set for Kurtz.
Yeah.
Like, and that's my biggest issue with this movie. I love 90% of this movie. I think what Coppola is able to do in terms of, I almost want to say Fellini-esque. Hear me out. It's almost Fellini-esque.
Episodic.
It's episodic. I'm thinking of La Dolce Vita specifically. And also Carnivalesque. So actually, I don't think it's a reach at all. There's some very Carnivalesque. That last outpost that they reach before they get to Kurtz, where like it's like the asshole
madness,
of the earth and there's stuff. That's totally Carnivalesque, and I could see the Fellini influence there. So actually, I think it's stronger than I thought. But I will say that Coppola does such an amazing job at like bringing the formalism that he had with the Godfather movies and The Conversation, and just like making it kind of psychedelic. And I think it's a really successful transition on his part. And I think everything tonally like really, really works. And again, it's broad, it's on the nose, but it works because it is almost, it's almost a cartoon.
Yeah.
So I will say that I am in love with like 90% of this movie, and obviously, like you were talking about, the scale is beyond impressive. Like you can only sit back and like be wowed by most of this film. But yeah, I really think the Kurtz stuff lets the film down.
So do you think so? I always love that you don't see Kurtz until the end. I think that that's a strong suit. I think a lesser movie would have had like flashbacks and like, so I do love that about it, that you don't see him at all. It's all this dossier, which is such a fun formal word.
It is.
I love it.
You know what would have been better is if Kurtz had relayed everything through the Dennis Hopper character. Instead of seeing him, let's say Willard is put in that cage and Dennis Hopper's talking to him and stuff. If he had just relayed what Kurtz was thinking and what Kurtz wanted from him and stuff, instead of really getting, and again, we could see Kurtz and maybe have like one scene with him, but you get too much with Kurtz.
Too much of him doing the same thing, which is just sitting in the temple in his fancy tunic and flowy pants and reading poetry.
And washing his bald head.
That's such ASMR though. I love the sound of like, who am I? I'm talking to the man who loves flowing water. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's funny actually. So today, because it's been 100 degrees, it's been 1,000,000 degrees, and I had the AC on all day, which is a window unit, so it's loud. It's in my living room, which is not far from my TV.
Yeah.
So because I wanted to properly watch this movie, I put headphones on, which I don't normally do, but actually I might have been more immersed in the movie because I had the headphones on. But long way of saying I appreciated the water sounds in headphones because they were like right in my ear.
I'm sure you did. Let's talk a little bit. So I found this really great article. It was an interview conducted through The Guardian. And this journalist was talking to Coppola. And it was right when was it called the final cut?
The one from 2019.
Final cut was coming out. And Coppola said that he doesn't consider this an anti-war film. And here's what he said, and I really loved this. He said, but an anti-war film, I always thought, should be like The Burmese Harp, which I haven't seen. Something filled with love and peace and tranquility and happiness. It shouldn't have sequences of violence that inspire a lust for violence. Apocalypse Now has stirring scenes of helicopters attacking innocent people. That's not anti-war. An anti-war film cannot glorify war, and Apocalypse Now arguably does. Certain sequences have been used to rev up people to be warlike. And then he went on to say that a modern anti-war film would be a movie about like an Iraqi wedding, like just a family gathering in Iraq. Yeah, times are hard, but there's like this beautiful celebration.
Sure, yeah.
And I love what he said. I love how he admitted it, because we talked about this again during Wild Bunch. How it's like how Peckinpah intended for it to be an anti-war movie, an anti-violence movie, but made it so extremely violent that there's no way it could be. And I
it's
love
like in slow motion.
I love that Coppola admitted this. Like, I think that is such a brave move on his part. I think he's absolutely right. Mm-hmm. And it got me really thinking, like,
do you know when that's from? When did he say that?
2019.
Like, 2019.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Like I was thinking of like Paths of Glory.
Yes.
Which is a perfect anti-war film, I feel like. Because you don't really get any combat sequences, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's my problem with Peckinpah saying that Wild Bunch is about the Vietnam War, because it's like,
well, we cannot even compare Peckinpah to Coppola. There's no contest.
Here's the thing. There's, of course, filmmaking aside, I just mean like the whole idea of the movies.
Yeah.
There's something about Apocalypse Now being set during the actual Vietnam War that makes it okay, rather than have this concept slapped into a genre that already glorifies violence. Mm-hmm. Do you get what the disconnect is here?
Yeah, totally. I completely
don't
agree.
want to talk about Wild Bunch anymore.
No more.
But it really did get me thinking. It actually did. And I love that Coppola said that. And yeah, I think that this movie does what it's supposed to do.
So do you know when before this movie came out, Coppola said, these are quotes, "My film is not about Vietnam. It is Vietnam."
Wow.
Which is incredibly pretentious, and I think is a window into his head at where he was when he was making the film, and the delirium.
Was he in Vietnam?
I don't think so. No. He was making like Godfather.
Yeah.
So that's incredibly pretentious, and I'm glad to hear that his comment from 2019, because it's true. And also, how can you make a film about the Vietnam conflict from the American point of view only, and not have a single speaking Vietnamese role in the film?
Exactly.
So yeah, this is not here's the thing. The movie's not about the Vietnam War, really. Like it is in the sense of it's showing how completely out of control it was and what a mess it was and how we had no business being there. But it's not, again, this is Heart of Darkness. Mm-hmm. It's taking Heart of Darkness and transplanting it into the Vietnam War, using the Vietnam War as a setting for this story that at this point was almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
So it's, again, like people, Apocalypse Now always gets brought up like, oh, best war movies. I'm like, I don't really, it's not a war movie. Like, I don't consider it a war movie.
No.
Yeah.
What do you consider it? Psychological thriller?
I mean, that's such a blank, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's part adventure film. It's part psychological, like it's
part history.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to really put. This one's kind of, I guess, why it gets always classified as a war film, because it's hard. What else are you gonna do it as? But I never saw it as a war film.
Right, but he said it's not an anti-war film.
Right.
Which is
I love his insight in that.
Yeah, that was really great, I thought. Yeah. But yeah, it is really interesting because, like, I don't know, I've always liked Full Metal Jacket more, and it's probably not right to compare the two.
You can.
And yet we always do. I think but it's funny, Full Metal Jacket has satire in it.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't. And I think that's why those moments
I disagree.
No, see, that's the thing. I think that's why I feel like some moments are so on the nose, because I feel like it's not really trying to be funny. It's just like,
I think it is.
Really?
Think about the Robert Duvall character. That's not satire.
Okay, that's what I was going to talk about. And it's just like, the surfing stuff, it gets out of hand. Like the man literally, there's bombs going off and he's like getting the water, but it looks and feels serious to me. It doesn't feel like satire.
No, but it is though. It's just it's satire playing it. Yeah.
What about the guys like jumping on the helicopter during the Playboy show?
Yeah. Well, I think that stuff happened.
Okay, mass.
Yeah.
When there's that like mass going on.
Uh-huh.
It's just too much. Like it's like
I don't know.
I
actually like that stuff.
The narration, like Can I play a clip?
Yeah, you want to play a clip?
Yeah. I don't know what it is about like smug, snide narration that like uses a lot of bad words. Here, I want to play one.
He received no official clearance. He just started up and did it. What balls?
I don't know. Look, honestly,
I think I don't know. There's something so smug about his narration and the way he's kind of like whispering it and trying to be like a badass, and it's just.
But he is a badass.
Yeah,
It's
Martin Sheen. He's so lovable and sweet, and like I feel
From what? You're thinking of his later career. What about him in like Badlands?
Oh yeah. Okay, but he's like an idiot in Badlands.
Yeah, I know, but he's still like suave and
He is. He's so cute.
You know what? I actually have zero problems with the narration.
You have zero problems?
Yeah.
I don't have many problems. It's just that line makes me laugh. And it's like too much of him like, I'm a jaded GI. Like, what balls? Like
I would argue that Coppola earns that narration in the opening scene with Willard.
Sure. Listen,
let's talk about
Willard and the opening scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first of all, he was actually drunk in that scene.
Was he really?
He was actually drunk, and when he punches the mirror and his hands bleeding, that's real.
I've heard
but he was actually completely wasted.
I love that.
Which is, again, just a brand of filmmaking that you don't really, especially in a big movie like Apocalypse Now was. It's a big deal. Like, that doesn't happen now, really.
Never.
It might happen in like
Never.
a low-budget film, but...
So the reason Keitel was sent away is because he couldn't understand that Willard was a bystander and was an observer the whole time. And Coppola like quickly noticed that and said, this isn't going to work. And it's really interesting because Willard is his most insane in that opening scene.
Yeah.
The rest of the movie, the second he goes on his mission, he's fine. He's the most sane out of every single person he meets.
Maybe because he's given a purpose.
Exactly.
But also he knows that it's bullshit, too.
I don't think he does. His PTSD is in full blow. He even says, he's like, when I'm there, I want to be here. When I'm here, I want to be there.
Right.
Like, I'm just waiting for a mission.
Yeah.
So it's,
He's seeing some shit at this point. Yes.
And they need him to be the normal one, the observer, because everyone else is so messed up.
Well, he's like a career guy because he talks about being like training at 19 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's Martin Sheen in this movie is like late 30s or maybe, like late 30s. So he's, he's been in like 20 years at this point. He's like a career guy.
So here's the thing. And I love what Kurtz says. Most of what Kurtz says is like, honestly, it kind of makes me roll my eyes. And
yes,
it is, right? It is just like he's this like a rupee car, like, I don't know, beat poet. And it's supposed to be him being very deep. I understand. A lot of the stuff goes over my head, but I do love when he says making a friend of horror. He says that, right?
Yeah.
He says, make a friend of horror. Horror and terror are your friends. If they are not, then they are enemies to be feared. So I think that's really the whole movie. Like, Kurtz takes making a friend of horror to an extreme and does like really bad things. But I think Willard, he has it kind of figured out the whole time. When he's not around the war, he misses it. And yet when he's around it, he's immune to it. Like he's just friendly enough with it where it doesn't scare him. Does that make sense?
He's never really scared in the movie. Even when he's with Kurtz and Kurtz is like, are you an assassin?
Yeah, no, he isn't scared. He's very calm and collected the whole time.
I think
and
he
then
just has nothing to lose too at this point. Like he's just so.
But it really is like he's been around that terror and now he's like kind of immune to it. Whereas Kurtz was like so disgusted by it that he said, I'm going to embrace it and become a psychopath myself. So then I'm not scared of it anymore.
I love all the stuff with Kurtz, the cult of Kurtz, like
his little kingdom.
Yeah, if you've seen like cult documentaries and stuff, like all the stuff like with Dennis Hopper, it's like it's all so culty.
Can I just say, I don't really like Dennis Hopper.
In general or in this movie?
I mean, I've really only seen him in this and Easy Rider.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah.
You've never seen him in anything else?
I don't think I have.
What? Really?
But what else is there?
Blue Velvet.
Oh!
Have you seen Blue Velvet?
No.
Oh. You didn't grow up on Speed? Or that was before your time?
Your age is showing.
It's like, or like his own like
okay, then let me rewind.
Like you haven't seen the American Friend?
No.
The Wim Wenders movie? Mm-mm. Don't write him off. Just first of all, wait. To what you just said.
Okay, I don't like him in this movie.
Hold on. Let me come in defense of Dennis Hopper.
Do you really like him?
I love Dennis Hopper.
Oh.
I'm a huge Dennis Hopper fan. I think he's underrated as an actor, honestly, too, because he always played a similar type of character, but he's always 100% believable. Like never once are you like, this guy's acting. He's in it and he gives his everything to every role. And he's usually kind of scary or like kooky or like, that's his thing.
He was on like a lot of drugs.
For sure. And also, again, we've talked about this in past episodes, but I think him as a director too is super underrated with his, of course, Easy Rider. And then you had The Last Movie, which he's also in and he's great in. And then you have Out of the Blue, which is amazing with Linda Manz. So I think I'm on a Dennis Hopper rant now because I need to defend him because you just threw him under the bus.
I'm sorry. I
He's
just haven't
incredible.
seen anything
He's
that I've been like
incredible.
really impressed by.
You don't like Easy Rider?
Not really.
Oh, I love Easy Rider.
I don't like it that much.
I love it.
Popular opinion. Where were we? Oh, but yeah, everyone is totally nuts. When Kilgore takes off his shirt and he's like, "Oh, surf, I'll do it." Like,
yeah,
he's crazy.
Of course.
But I love it. It's great. Like, I love the idea of this movie. I really like this movie. I think everything works really well. In fact, I think you're a little hard on the Kurt stuff, just a little bit, but I do agree that he does talk too much and says too much nonsense.
Well, do you remember that? Do you remember that Seinfeld episode where Jay Peterman goes to like the jungle and Elaine visits him? And it's literally the scene from the Kurt scene.
Yes. Oh my God.
From Seinfeld.
I have a question for you. Who's your favorite character? Because there's a lot of good characters.
I do love Willard, and I do think you get enough of Willard in the film to like latch onto him and feel for him and be empathetic. My favorite character though is the chef.
Same. Chef is my favorite character.
Because you see him, first of all, he's just a normal guy. He just wanted to be, he's a saucier. He literally just wanted to cook, and he got into the service and he's like, okay, I'll go into cooking.
Cook. And then he couldn't stand the fact that they were boiling ribeye, and I love
prime
that.
Rib, I think. Prime rib, yeah.
And I love that. Like, I love how he kept his integrity. He's like, hey, I'm a chef. I cannot take part in this. I'd rather be a radio man.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, what's more human than that?
Yeah. Again, you see him lose it throughout this movie.
But he doesn't lose it in the end, he's the reliable one. And not Lance, who's like completely off the rails.
Well, yes and no. I think he's cracked by the end.
He's cracked, but Willard trusts him to call in the airstrike.
Yeah, because he's all he has. And because Lance is completely...
Exactly. But you're right. I love Chef. I love the tiger attack. I love how it's not just like a gag, like, oh, they got attacked by a tiger. Like, no, he's really freaking out. Yeah, he is like, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah.
It's great.
And then, of course, the scene with the boat, the puppies, and he does not want to board this boat. And the captain's like, get on the boat.
Yeah. Listen, Clean is a sweet kid, but why did you do that, Clean?
Yeah. Yeah. Old Larry Fishburne. I know. It's that scene is so sad, and not just because
sad, and so Aguirre.
Yeah, so Aguirre, and not just because a puppy is like slightly mishandled, which is like kind of rough to watch.
Oh, that is the least of our issues.
Well, I'm talking about in terms of the actual filming of the movie,
okay,
because obviously those people are not actually dying, but this puppy was.
I thought you meant narratively.
No, not narratively.
Okay.
But that scene is, I feel so bad for Chef. I feel, because he's on the boat, he didn't want to be there, and then they're getting gunned down, and he's like crying as they're like getting killed, and it's just tearing him up.
It's horrible.
It's tearing him up.
It's really horrible.
I think he's the most empathetic character in the movie.
I'm so glad you said that, because I wasn't sure, because I wanted to mention how much I loved him, so I'm like, let me just ask Greg what his favorite is.
As far as I know, this is his second collaboration with Coppola, because he was in The Conversation.
I should watch that.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And Harrison Ford's in it.
I'm sold.
It's so good. No, it's amazing. And it's John Cazale who plays Fredo in The Godfather and Gene
love
Hackman.
him.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
You know the John Cazale, this is a rant, John Cazale and Meryl Streep story, right?
Yeah. And they were together when he died, right?
They were engaged.
Yeah, that's so sad.
Ugh.
I know. Tragic.
So going back to Aguirre, though, that
Yes, let's
moment
talk about
was
Aguirre.
super Aguirre. Also, the chopper in the tree.
Yes.
So Aguirre.
Oh, totally.
Except
So
Aguirre was a ship. But
if you haven't heard our Aguirre episode, you should go back and check it out.
Aguirre, the Wrath of God.
Aguirre, the Wrath of God, the Herzog film, which came several years before this and was, as noted by Coppola, a pretty big influence on Apocalypse Now.
So clear to see. Just,
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Again, it's a descent into madness via a journey on a river. Like they have that in common. But yeah, no, this is so okay. In the Aguirre episode, you and I both said we like Aguirre more than Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Do you still stand by that?
Yes, I do.
I think I do too. Yeah, I think I do too. I think this viewing today of Apocalypse Now, it went up a little bit. This is the cool thing about movies. Your relationship to movies changes all the time throughout your life.
true.
You see something younger, you see it later, you feel differently about it. Every time I see Apocalypse Now, I feel slightly different. I also feel
Yeah.
that way about Clockwork Orange, which is a movie I know you don't love.
I actually don't like it.
And again, I've seen Clockwork Orange where I've been like, no, I'm not having this. And then the next time I'll see it, like 2 years later, I'm like, no, this is great. So I have this like very complicated relationship. But as of now, I really like Apocalypse Now.
Okay.
But yeah, I do think Aguirre might inch it out. The difference between the two. I think Aguirre has slightly more integrity, if that makes sense. Aguirre is earthier. Aguirre is subtler.
Ethereal.
It's ethereal.
Ethereal.
Yeah, it just. But Apocalypse Now is big, bombastic, dreamlike.
Gigantic.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think, again, they're different enough. You know, obviously, they're pretty different.
Yes, of course. But they both have this connotation. Like, obviously, there's so much behind Apocalypse Now. But one thing they share is just this, these foreigners coming into a land full of native people and completely, utterly destroying it and exploiting it. And they have that in common. They have something about floating down a river and losing your mind. And when did Aguirre come out?
72, I believe.
Okay.
Which was the year of the first Godfather.
Oh, wow. Interesting. There's something about Aguirre, too, where it's like, yes, this movie is like so Vietnam. Right. And he said, oh, my movie is Vietnam. And
Coppola,
I know we just talked about how it's anti-war and you don't consider it a war film. But at the end of the day, it is a Vietnam War movie. And Aguirre is not.
Right.
I don't really know where I'm going with this. I'm kind of rambling.
You're just putting them side by side.
I suppose, yeah. I get what you mean where it has more integrity. It has more maybe like relevance to more people who don't want to see a movie about Vietnam.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think an Aguirre is told in like almost half the time too.
Aguirre's told in half the time. It's so much quieter.
Yes. It's more meditative. Yeah.
Oh, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's hard to think in this heat.
It is so hot.
Go ahead.
This kind of bums me out too. Like, again, beautiful opening to this movie, but like that's actual, like they're blowing up the jungle.
That's what I was going to ask you actually. Did they actually blow up the jungle in the Philippines?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
Yep.
That's messed up.
With the Doors song. Were you into the Doors at all? No. I could tell.
I like them. You could tell. Why?
I would imagine you being like, no, it's too old.
Please. See yourself out. How dare you?
I had a big Doors phase. Yeah.
You had a big everything phase.
A huge Doors phase.
What other phases?
I mean,
Pixies?
Mention it. Oh yeah, but I still love the Pixies. The Doors, I'm like more. I still like, but I'm not. I loved the Doors. I had like a Jim Morrison shirt, and like I saw the remaining members of the Doors, and I remember seeing them in concert and being like, "These guys like have been with Jim Morrison," and I like couldn't believe it. Like I was that obsessed with the Doors. I love
that.
Yeah.
I love going back to that opening scene. First of all, there's amazing camera work, obviously. In this
and
movie.
sound design.
Sound design. So I love how you don't hear the attack.
There's no explosion.
Nothing.
It's
just
the
the helicopter
and the doors
with the doors, with the ceiling fan blade. I feel weird mentioning this. It's like, okay, yeah, obviously we know this, guys, because this movie is so iconic. But like,
but you know,
it's still, I love that opening so much.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But you're immediately in the movie, and then you're at his hotel,
and
in
it's
Saigon.
genius.
Yeah,
I think the opening's genius,
so
and I
good.
think the way that it's cut is great, and the sounds and the lack of sounds.
Speaking of the sounds, how do you feel about the synth score for the film?
I like it.
I like it too.
I think it works really well.
I remember when I first saw this, like in high school, I actually did not like that. But now, of
Interesting.
course, my appreciation for music and things is much broader than it was when I was a teenager.
I love the scene where the Ride of the Valkyries playing.
What scene's that? Sorry.
It's too hot to make jokes. It's playing and then it cuts abruptly to the village with like no music.
Yes.
That's a great cut.
And then you hear you hear Wagner like slowly coming
Yes.
in. Yes.
That's a
It's very
beautiful
eerie.
one.
You hear the bells from the school or the church or something.
Also, yeah. Another great camera thing I love is when Willard is being briefed at that lunch. Like all those great point of view shots of his, where it's just like
and all that food.
really weird. All that food, really weird. You can tell something's off when Harrison Ford drops the papers. When that guy's eating the shrimp, it's all so like.
So there's Harrison Ford, and then there's the other guy who does the briefing, who's from Godfather 2. Who's great. He's like the senator in Godfather 2. And then there's the guy with the gray hair who just like stares at Willard the whole
Stares at
time.
him. Yeah.
That's a vibe.
I love it. It's really great. It really sets the mood.
It does.
And I love the shadows. I know you said that Marlon Brando didn't want to be, he was really insecure. And that's why a lot of his scenes are shot in these shadows. But I think it's wonderful. Like, I think when he's telling the story about the inoculation and the shadows that are coming in and out of his face.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
Again, I wish we had less. That's all. We get too much.
But it's like
too much.
The mystery is created like with the camera and the fact that we haven't seen him until that point. I don't know how I feel about that.
Do you think all the Kurt stuff works like really well?
No, I don't. I think that he is very much like this kind of pseudo-intellectual blabberer, which is, it gets old. He doesn't do anything else.
Because the surprising thing is the surroundings. It's the temple he's in. It's the heads on the steps. It's the bodies hanging from the trees. That's Kurt's. So it's like you get the picture, but then you have to sit down with them and hear him talk for 20 minutes. When it's like, it's kind of killing it.
And it's like, it's such a cliche to have a villain who's like actually very philosophical and talks and, just is like very calm and mellow in person. I just think it's a cliche at this point. And it wasn't back then, but like, listen.
Well, this movie does use like tropes, like
a lot of tropes.
Yeah, it was already a thing,
I mean, I think he works okay.
Is
Kurt's
a champagne villain?
Yeah,
Is he a Bond villain?
Yeah, I don't have that big of an issue with him as you do. But
actually, Kurtz is a Bond villain.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my problem. He should have been something. And again, I love the Bond movies and I love the Bond villains, but he should have been elevated.
Yeah, like, oh, please tell my son that, what I did. And
did you notice in this movie there are no credits anywhere?
I did notice that.
Like, not in the beginning, not in the end. There's no title.
Not in the middle, like Gaspar
Noé.
Noé.
There's not a single person's name in this movie because when it came out, there was a program. You got a program and it had all the credits in there.
I love that. Gosh, bring back programs and bring back intermissions.
Yes.
That's my pitch.
Yes. One quick thing I have to say. I just pulled this up. You were dissing Dennis Hopper earlier. I just have to say this. This is a critic named Michael Stragow. I think I'm pronouncing that. I'm probably completely messing up his last name, but he frequently writes for Film Comment. That's where I know him from. But he said about Dennis Hopper in this movie, he says, Hopper may express more about the fallout of the 60s than anything else in the movie. And I completely agree. I think the Dennis Hopper character is so key to this whole thing. Because if they get there and it's just Kurtz and everybody else, just these like followers, it's not the same thing. Whereas the Hopper character is an American, although they also
Yeah.
have that American, I'm not sure the rank of this other officer
That went to go kill him, but then joined him.
then joined him. Yeah. But yeah, I think the Hopper character is key. I'm just going to say that.
I like him.
Yeah, sure.
Just
We
so
heard, we all heard what
crazy
you said
about
earlier.
him. I think it's time for us to do sight and sound before we melt.
Yeah.
What's your favorite sight?
My favorite sight in a movie full of amazing sights is it's just the reveal of Kurtz's lair at that temple with the bodies hanging from the trees. There's this long shot and you see the steps and Dennis Hopper's there among everyone else. And
With his like 5 cameras hanging around his neck.
more than that probably. It's just that it's that quiet sort of reveal.
Where's he getting film?
Maybe he just brought a shit ton of film with him. I don't know. So that's mine. What about you?
My favorite sight is a water shot.
What?
Funnily enough. Did I spark your interest?
Are you me for this episode?
It is a shot where they're on the boat on the water. It's sunset. The water's rippling. It's just a really quiet moment. I'm surprised you didn't choose it.
That's your favorite shot?
Yeah, why is that so weird?
No, I don't know. It's just
I know I could have gone with something very grandiose.
it's just like a random shot of the boat with water behind it.
But it's the slow way the water is curling
I
into
guess,
itself.
but it doesn't
in the
say anything about the
sunset.
film, which I guess is fine. I've plenty of the shots and sounds sights and sounds I picked in the past don't have that much to do with the movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I'm digging into you so hard.
Yeah, and it's water. No, I think it's just a really lovely moment. And yeah, I could have gone with something really disgusting and gross and
Or not. Or just something really, I don't know. I feel like we're delirious at this point. It's just so hot in here.
we really are. But it's appropriate for this episode.
Yeah. Like I can't even think straight anymore.
Pasadena. I'm only in Pasadena.
My favorite sound is actually the synth. So when they get to that last outpost before Kurtz and the asshole of the earth, I think they call it, the score is kind of circusy and nightmarish.
Yes.
Here, I'll play it for you.
Get your ass in gear! Security AGUIRRE to the bottom of the pontoon!
Come on, man, listen to the music, man.
Still not find the CO!
You came right to it, son of a bitch.
Lance! Get down here!
Got it.
Yeah, they go
What does
for
that
it.
have to do with the movie?
It's a choice. It is a choice. No, because the circusy,
kidding.
again,
I'm
it's
kidding.
almost on the nose, but the circus of the war,
Of
it's
course. No,
Yeah.
that whole sequence is crazy. Like
my favorite sight almost came from that.
everyone
sequence.
is just so confused.
No one knows who's in charge.
What? That is the most. That's one of the scariest scenes
Yeah.
because
Oh yeah.
imagine you're there and like you don't even know who's in charge.
I think it is the scariest scene.
Okay, my favorite sound is when they are attacking that very quiet village, the cavalry. One young guy says this. It's a very real moment. I feel like you don't really see that much. Like you see people hesitating, but I love the look on his face and I love the way that he's saying, he's just like, I'm not going. And someone just has to pull him in.
It's actually terrifying.
It is.
Yeah. Like I used to think that was funny, and now
No.
it's like, no, that's horrific.
It's not funny. It's more just, it's very real.
It's gonna
to
get
me.
blown up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway,
Pauline Kael.
Pauline Kael.
All right, you ready? So here's the weird thing about it. Came out in 1979. As far as I can tell, I don't know that she properly reviewed the film. I could not find a review anywhere.
That's so weird.
But I found like 2 paragraphs that in other reviews or other essays that she wrote about Apocalypse Now. So here's what she had to say. Part of the widespread anticipation of Apocalypse Now was, I think, our readiness for a visionary, climactic, summing up movie. We felt that terrible rehash of pop culture couldn't go on, mustn't go on, that something new was needed. Coppola must have felt that too, but he could not supply it. His film was posited on great thoughts arriving at the end, a confrontation and a revelation. And when they weren't there, people slunk out of theaters or tried to comfort themselves with chatter about the psychedelic imagery. Trying to say something big, Coppola got tied up in a big knot of American self-hatred and guilt, and what the picture boiled down to was white man, he devil.
So good.
No, I think she's off base there. I think that is a oversimplification of the film.
You even said yourself you feel like it's a little anticlimactic.
No, that part
the whole Kurtz thing.
I'm just talking about her last sentence. I don't agree with, but I do think in general the rest that she said I feel is spot on. Of like, oh, it's something new, and then you get to Kurtz, you're like, oh, that's it, okay. I agree. Honestly, I can imagine audiences in '79 that saw this. Half the people are probably like, oh, what an amazing ending, and the other half are like,
no, I heard some people were very confused, and that's why there were like rumors of a different ending.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So that's Pauline.
We didn't even discuss the Tuki Buki of it all.
What about it?
The buffalo at the end.
Oh, sure. So that buffalo was going to be killed in a like tribal ceremony, and Coppola found out about it and just asked if he could film it. It's still upsetting. I think knowing though that the buffalo did not die for the movie is a slight relief. Yeah. It's still like not pleasant to see, but you know,
such is 70s cinema.
I just think an animal should never be hurt or killed for a movie.
I just don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Should we get into Letterboxd?
Let's do it. Letterboxd time. Okay. I have a 0.5-star review here. It just says, "Let me save you 3 hours." They find the guy, and it's Marlon Brando in a bald wig. He does a Shakespeare monologue, then a cow gets sacrificed, and Dennis Hopper commits suicide or something.
He does?
I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. I was too busy getting my onyx polished by my emotionally unstable neighbor. I win.
What?
I don't know what
Dennis
that
Hopper
means.
doesn't commit suicide, does he?
I don't know. Something happened. No, I don't think so. I don't know.
I have a 4-star review. Wow, Sofia Coppola's dad is actually pretty good at the whole making movies thing. I guess he takes after his daughter.
I saw that one.
That's just relatable to me.
1 star. Okay, here goes my first bad review. This movie had been recommended to me by so many people over the years, and I finally sat down to watch it. First hour or so, I was totally bought in. Awesome seeing some of the cast back in their younger years. However, it turns into a total character drama and quickly lost its appeal to me. I definitely would not seek it out to watch again. Unpopular opinion, I know. So this person...
Yeah, doesn't like it because it's a character drama.
Like, I literally could not be more different from a person.
Literally. Same.
Yeah.
0.5 star. Tropic Thunder, but without the funny jokes.
3.5 stars. Main character spends most of this film staring at pictures of young Marlon Brando. Now that's what I call relatable.
I love that. Last one, 0.5 star. If I could rate this film -10 out of 5 stars, I would. It's so boring. The main character has the world's most boring voice. And don't come at me and say, he's meant to. It shows how the war has affected him and he's numb to it. No, I don't care. It added nothing to his character and made me want to fall asleep. There are so many more reasons I hate this film, but I will leave it at that.
Oh, God.
It's funny because I talked about the narration. But no, I'm not like that. I like Martin Sheen. I like his voice.
Yeah, he has a great voice.
Anyway.
Perfect narration voice. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up on Apocalypse Now. Plus, it's 1,000,000 degrees in here. So...
Yeah.
Next week we are doing Edward Yang. So it's our second Edward Yang after Yi Yi, which we both loved.
Yes. I'm so
I'd
excited.
say it's one of the best movies we've done so far.
I think so too.
So we're coming back next week for what's arguably considered his masterwork, A Brighter Summer Day, which is a 4-hour epic, 4-hour character drama.
Greg, you said in Yi how much you don't like this movie.
Yeah, I saw this once a couple years ago, and I really didn't like it.
I'm
so
really excited to see
your
reaction.
I'm excited to see it again. I'm glad that something's pushing me to rewatch it, but the fact that it's 4 hours is like, oh.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Damn.
Full 4.
Yeah, at least. It might be over. It might be 4.5. I could be wrong. It's at least 4 hours.
So our longest movie yet.
Yes, so far. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us for Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, hopefully we covered all the bases. We probably didn't, but we did our best. It's 1,000,000 degrees, and it's also an intimidating movie to talk about just because it's so beloved and there's so much written about it.
Already talked about so much.
Yeah, it's so
That's another
storied.
problem I have, I think, right now.
Yeah.
With my weird existential crisis of like, yeah, I love...
You're playing the Greg role tonight.
I
feel like-
suppose I am.
Yes.
I love... This is literally my favorite area, one of my favorite topics in art, and yet I just feel so overwhelmed with like distaste for America right now
Yes.
that I'm just over it.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Anyway,
We are not in a good place.
we are in a really bad place, actually.
Yeah. Well,
On that note.
on that very uplifting, optimistic note,
Thanks for joining us.
yeah, come back next week. We're doing a brighter summer day. Hopefully, it won't be 1,000,000 degrees, and we'll have a clearer heads
It won't
about
be
it.
too bright because then it will be hot.
Why can't it be a cold winter day?
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yes, me too. Until then, I'm Greg.
I'm Jackie.
Have a great week.
Bye.
This has been an official podcast of the Arroyo Film Club. Seen and Heard is Jacqueline Pistachian and Greg Kleinschmidt. Theme music by Andrew Cox. You can find us at seenandheardpod.com.